All right, so today we're going deep on Tori Spelling. Yeah, we're talking about her recent split from Dean McDermott and all the stuff she's been saying about how it's impacting their 5 kids. We're basing this deep dive on an article from People magazine, by the way. You know People, right?
hmm
Always got the scoop on celeb news and personal stories. Anyway, so Spelling is being really upfront about how tough things have been since the separation. Like, it's been rough on everyone, especially the kids.
Yeah, no kidding. Divorce is always hard. It's like
Hmm.
inherently traumatic, like your whole world is getting shaken up. And that can trigger that fight or flight response that Spelling was talking about.
Oh, yeah, she actually used the phrase living on a roller coaster to describe what their life feels like right now, which, I mean, I get it. Roller coasters are fun, but not when it's your everyday life, right? Especially for kids. So I was
Yeah.
thinking, like, what does that kind of constant instability actually do to a kid? I know it's not good, but is there like actual psychological research on this?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Tons of research on this, actually. Child development experts, they found that kids who are dealing with a lot of upheaval, like moving around a lot, switching schools,
Yeah.
or going through their parent separation, they tend to develop more anxiety, become more insecure. It can mess with their emotional regulation, too. Make it harder for them to form stable attachments. And sometimes you even see signs of regression, like they start acting younger than they are.
Oh, wow. Okay. So no wonder Spelling feels guilty about putting her kids through all this. She even says in the article, they're on this roller coaster with me, unfortunately. Like she's carrying the weight of their well being on her shoulders.
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in. Every parent wants to shield their kids from pain. But we got to remember that resilience comes from facing tough stuff, too. It's not about pretending hardship doesn't exist. It's about giving kids the tools they need to handle those ups and downs.
Hmm. That's a good point. So it's like this balancing act, right? Trying to protect their innocence, but also prepare them for reality. Because speaking of reality, the article also talks about how different Spelling's life is now compared to before the separation. She talks about how she used to have this successful career with multiple TV shows, product lines, the whole 9 yards, and she was able to provide a certain lifestyle for her kids.
And now, well, things are different, right? She's facing financial instability, which adds a whole other layer of stress to the situation.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, she mentions that her older kids, the 4 oldest, they weren't really aware of money problems before, but now all 5 of them are getting exposed to the family struggles, which makes me wonder, like, how much should parents tell their kids about money problems? Where's the line between being honest and burdening them with worries they can't handle?
It's a tough question, no doubt about it. And there's no one-size-fits-all answer. Some experts say you should be open, communicate with your kids. Even young kids can grasp basic financial concepts. But others think it's better to just focus on reassurance, making them feel secure and loved, and shielding them from the nitty-gritty details until they're older.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's about finding that sweet spot, I guess. Being honest without overwhelming them. Speaking of honesty, the article also talks about all the criticism Spelling has been facing, even before this whole separation thing.
Right, she even says she's used to harsh responses.
Which, considering her upbringing, being famous from such a young age, her family's history in the spotlight, it's understandable that she might be sensitive to what people say.
Totally. And it makes you think about how that constant pressure to live up to everyone's expectations, how much that has shaped her whole experience. And it kind of makes you think about your own life, too. Like, how do we deal with judgment and criticism? Everyone faces it to some degree. Do we try to ignore it? Do we seek validation from others? It's something to think about, for sure.
Yeah, it really is. So, to wrap this part up, it seems like Spelling's going through a lot right now. And it's really interesting to see how she's trying to navigate it all, both for herself and for her kids.
Yeah, it's a pretty complex situation, and it'll be interesting to see how things unfold for her.
I agree. And for now, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll dive into another aspect of this story that I think will really resonate with a lot of our listeners.
Sounds good to me.
All right, see you in a few. Okay, so we're back. And one thing that really stood out to me in this article was how Spelling is using therapy to help her through all of this.
Yeah, therapy can be really helpful in a situation like this. I mean, think about everything she's dealing with. Separation, financial stress, raising 5 kids. Plus, she's got the whole world watching her every move. That's a lot for anyone to handle.
Totally.
Yeah.
And for someone like Spelling who grew up with, a lot of privilege and stability, this must feel like a really huge shift.
Oh, absolutely. It's like her whole world has been turned upside down. and she's having to figure out a whole new way of being.
Right. It makes that whole fight or flight response she talks about make more sense.
Exactly. It's your body's way of reacting to stress. And when your security is threatened on multiple levels, like emotional security, financial security, even physical security, those feelings can get really intense.
So how does therapy actually help in a situation like this?
Well, first of all, it gives you a safe space to process all those emotions. You know, a therapist can help Spelling work through those negative thoughts and feelings, help her develop coping mechanisms for stress and anxiety, and ultimately help her regain a sense of control over her life.
That's like building a new set of tools, right? To deal with all these new challenges.
Exactly. It's not just about getting by. It's about thriving, about using this experience as an opportunity for growth.
I like that. Growth in the midst of chaos. And speaking of her kids, the article also talks about how Spelling is trying to be honest with them, but also protect their innocence.
It's a tricky balance for sure. You want to be truthful, especially when your kids are directly affected by what's going on,
Hmm.
but you also don't want to overwhelm them with adult worries.
It's about finding that sweet spot again, right?
Yeah, it's an ongoing process. What a 5-year-old can handle is totally different from what a 10-year-old can understand. You got to meet them where they are.
And for Spelling, there's the added layer of public scrutiny.
Oh yeah, that adds a whole other level of complexity. Imagine trying to deal with all this while knowing that the whole world is watching and judging.
I can't even imagine.
So it's like you're not just protecting your kids from the situation itself, you're also trying to shield them from how other people might perceive it.
Right, and that speaks to a bigger issue.
Our society's obsession with celebrity. We put these people on a pedestal, then we tear them down when they don't meet our expectations.
And we forget that they're human beings just like us.
Exactly, with their own struggles and vulnerabilities.
And in Spelling's case, she's really putting her humanity on display,
She's not hiding from the messy parts of her life.
which forces us to re-examine our own ideas about success and happiness.
It's a good reminder that having it all doesn't mean you're immune to life's challenges.
So it brings us back to that idea of resilience.
How do we deal with those unexpected curveballs, even if they don't play out on the cover of People magazine?
Because we all face them, right?
Absolutely, and there's no easy answer.
But Spelling's story gives us some clues.
Like the importance of seeking support
Yeah, friends, family, therapy, whatever works for you.
and being vulnerable.
Not being afraid to show your struggles.
Because chances are someone else is going through something similar.
Right, and that shared vulnerability can create a sense of connection.
It reminds us that we're not alone in this.
So maybe that's the most important takeaway here. Even when things feel chaotic and uncertain.
There's always hope. There's always the potential for growth and transformation.
I like that, hope and transformation.
And you know what, speaking of transformation, I think it's time we talked about Spelling's relationship with money.
Oh yeah, that's a whole other fascinating aspect of this story, because the article mentions how she's trying to make it on her own now, but she also grew up with a ton of money, so this must be a huge adjustment for her.
It's a pretty wild contrast.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see how she navigates this new financial reality.
Yeah, this whole thing about Spelling's finances really got me thinking. I mean, the article talks about how she's trying to make it on her own now, but she grew up super wealthy, so this whole experience must be pretty jarring for her.
Oh yeah, totally different world. Going from a childhood where money was no object to having to budget, make ends meet, and possibly even explaining financial limits to your kids. That's a huge adjustment.
Right, and it makes you wonder how her upbringing shaped her views on money, like the privilege, but also the constant public scrutiny.
Yeah, for sure, our early experiences with money, especially what we learn from our families, it really sticks with us, influences our habits and attitudes as adults.
So if Spelling grew up with this money is no big deal mindset, it's understandable why she might struggle now with being more careful with spending.
Exactly, it's a common thing. People who've had sudden wealth or big financial changes, they often have a hard time adapting to a new reality.
And especially when you're also dealing with a separation, single parenting, and everyone watching your every move.
Oh yeah, talk about pressure.
It's like all these things piling up on top of each other.
Makes you realize that money problems can happen to anyone, even if you're famous and seemingly have it all.
Right, and it can bring up a lot of deeper stuff too.
Like insecurities about your self-worth,
Yeah.
your ability to provide for your family, can really shake you to your core.
Which brings us back to that idea of resilience.
How do you find the strength to keep going when everything feels so shaky?
Exactly. What's the secret?
Well, based on Spelling's story, I think the first step is just admitting that things are tough, both the external stuff and the stuff going on inside you. and then reaching out for help, whatever that looks like for you.
It's like she's saying, hey, I'm not perfect. I'm figuring this out as I go. And there's something really powerful about that honesty.
It's relatable, reminds us that we're all just human, even those who seem to have it all together.
And in that shared humanity, maybe we can find some connection and empathy.
Knowing that we're not alone in these struggles.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm feeling both empathy for Spelling and what she's going through, but also inspired by her willingness to be so open about her journey.
It's a good reminder that life is full of surprises. And even when things feel chaotic, there's always something to learn, something to be grateful for.
Yeah, and maybe that's the biggest takeaway here. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time.